old highway stretched before me like a desolate wasteland, its asphalt obscured by a blanket of snow and ice. It was the winter of 2011, and I found myself driving down this forsaken road with my girlfriend by my side, our breath mingling with the frosty air inside the car. As we pressed on through the blizzard's fury, a sense of isolation settled over us, like a heavy cloak. The world outside seemed to vanish into the swirling white abyss, leaving only the ominous hum of the engine and the rhythmic thud of our hearts to break the silence. Suddenly ahead of us, I spotted the faint glow of taillights cutting through the storm. Relief flooded through me as I realized we weren't alone on this desolate road. We followed the lights at a cautious distance, grateful for the guiding beacon in the darkness. But our sense of security was short-lived. Without warning, the car ahead came to an abrupt stop, forcing us to slam on the brakes to avoid a collision. My heart leaped into my throat as I peered through the windshield, trying to make sense of the situation. What could have prompted the driver to halt in the middle of nowhere, in the midst of a raging snowstorm? I felt a chill creep down my spine as I contemplated the possibilities. Summoning my courage, I stepped out into the biting cold, the snow crunching beneath my boots as I approached the motionless vehicle. What I saw next sent shivers down my spine. A truck blocked the road, its doors flung wide open, and two sets of tracks disappeared into the darkness of the surrounding woods. The air hung heavy with an oppressive silence, broken only by the howling wind and the distant sound of our own breathing. Fear gnawed at the edges of my mind as I tried to comprehend the scene before me. Something felt terribly wrong, like we had stumbled upon the aftermath of a nightmare. But before I could investigate further, a voice shattered the eerie stillness. It was the driver of the SUV, his words a stark reminder of the danger lurking in the shadows. "It's stolen," he said, his voice trembling with fear. "The truck, it's been reported stolen." With those words ringing in my ears, I stumbled back to the safety of my car, my hands trembling as I gripped the steering wheel. The weight of the situation pressed down on me like a suffocating blanket, filling me with a sense of dread, unlike anything I had ever known. As we drove away, the image of the abandoned truck burned into my memory like a brand, a haunting reminder of the darkness that lurked just beyond the edge of the storm. And in the days that followed, as news of the missing man spread like wildfire through the small town nearby, I couldn't shake the feeling that we had narrowly escaped a fate far worse than death. For in that frozen wilderness, where the snow whispered of ancient secrets and the wind carried the echoes of forgotten souls, there existed a darkness beyond comprehension, a darkness that threatened to consume us all if we dared to venture too close. And as the storm raged on, engulfing everything in its icy embrace, I couldn't help but wonder what other horrors lay hidden in the depths of the blizzard's grasp.
On the outskirts of town, where the glow of streetlights fades into darkness, stretched a menacing night highway. Anyone who had ever stumbled upon this stretch of road felt an unknown fear, as if the breath of evil wove among the trees surrounding the highway. One chilly autumn evening, a young couple, Jack and Alice, were driving through this highway on their way to visit relatives. The road seemed endless, and the air was filled with menace. Suddenly, their car stalled. Their attempts to restart it were futile. It was dark, and silence enveloped the surroundings. Desperate and frightened, Jack and Alice decided to walk to the nearest town. They left their car behind and ventured forward, the wind piercing them to the bone, as if foretelling doom. After an hour's walk, it seemed like the highway would never end, but finally, they spotted the outline of an abandoned motel. Upon entering the building, they found it deserted and derelict. However, in a neighboring room, they discovered an ancient book filled with strange symbols and drawings. Despite the ominous mood the discovery evoked, Jack and Alice decided to spend the night at the motel. They settled into their room, hoping for the morning light and assistance. But the night turned out to be long and nightmarish. In her sleep, Alice saw shadows passing by the windows and heard whispers of sinister voices. Jack, on the other hand, kept waking up every few minutes, sensing an unexplained dread. In the morning, they decided to leave the motel, but found the door locked. All the windows were barred too. They tried calling for help, but the phone line was dead. With each passing minute, Fear grew, and the motel seemed more ominous. Their calls for help went unanswered, and their supplies dwindled. Finally, in one of his awakenings, Jack discovered that Alice had disappeared. He was left all alone, surrounded by darkness and the gloom of the night highway. The last words from Jack were found in a diary discovered weeks later. When the police searched the abandoned motel it came from the darkness, it took her. "I can't stay here anymore. If anyone finds this message, do not approach this place. It's something terrible, lurking in the shadows. It seeks new victims. Save yourselves while you still can." Since then, the motel on the night highway remained abandoned and ominous, avoided by all who knew its story.
We, childhood friends, always dreamed of embarking on a grand adventure together. However, as life often goes, our paths diverged, and our dream of the journey remained just that, a dream. But when one of us, Jake, inherited his grandfather's old van, we realized it was our chance to make the dream come true. And so, one day, we decided to turn our plans into reality. Our hearts were filled with joy and excitement as we set out on this journey. We sang songs, cracked jokes, and made plans for the future, reveling in the freedom and the closeness of our bond. But as the sun dipped below the horizon and darkness enveloped the road, my joy began to give way to unease. The highway, surrounded by dense forest, seemed unusually ominous to me. I tried to shake off these dark thoughts, but something inside me whispered that we were in for something out of the ordinary. And my premonitions proved true. On that night when our van began to jostle, as if someone were pushing it from the side, my soul filled with dread. I watched as anxiety reflected on the faces of my friends, and it only heightened my fears. We tried to make sense of what was happening, but when the van lost control and we found ourselves stranded in the dark forest, my fears turned into full-blown panic. We had to check the van, and as I stepped outside, in the darkness, I heard strange sounds and rustlings that sent shivers down my spine. That night on the dark highway left us battered and bruised. We survived a nightmare that will forever remain etched in our hearts and memories. But what's most terrifying is that we never found out what forces lurked in the dark depths of the forest and why we were chosen.